Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We have a special guest joining us in the studio today. Jimmy Haslip is here. Master bassist, producer,
Very kind.
songwriter, composer, all kinds of things you got your fingers into. Literally and figuratively.
Mostly producing over the last 5 years, but yeah, still playing and happy to be here with Jing Chi.
Yeah, so you're in the Sweetwater Studios recording a new album. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about what's going on there.
Well, actually, Robin Ford was the catalyst for this project. We had been in conversation about maybe doing another Jing Chi record. I've produced 3 for the band, but the third one, the last one we did, was something like 4 or 5 years ago. So it's been a while. And I wasn't really sure we could resurrect the project, but Robin and I spoke recently about possibly doing something with the band again.
Right.
And I then spoke to the little record company that's been putting the records out. And that's a company called Shrapnel, with a gentleman named Mike Varney, who runs that company out of Vegas now. They were in Novato, California. And I've known Mike for a long time. So I spoke with Mike about it, and he was enthused to resurrect Jing Chi.
Excellent.
Do another record. And I've been working a lot with Vinny Colaiuta. So a couple of things I produced not long ago, he played drums on. And I've probably done 40 different projects with him. And I've known him since the mid-'70s, so we go back.
Right.
So I contacted Vinny, and he was happy to jump in. So here we are. Robin met, I don't know who exactly he met first, but he met and talked to somebody here.
Right.
And they were interested in having him here for a workshop, or maybe bringing in his band to record, and he mentioned Jing Chi, and that seemed to be of interest to you guys, so we're here.
Right, kind of got the whole thing rolling. Right.
And we're working with Mark Hornsby, and he's great.
Right, an awesome producer and engineer. Absolutely. I can't wait to hear what you guys are putting out there.
Yeah, I think we have a direction.
Nice.
It took a second, but we figured something out, and the composition part was difficult because we all have really hectic, extensive schedules. So that was a bit of a challenge, but I think we've nipped that in the bud, and we've moved on, and we're about to record our 8th, 9th, and 10th piece today.
Wow.
So
you're moving fast. Moving fast. So speaking of hectic schedules, we were talking the other day, and you mentioned that you're simultaneously producing 6 projects. You're doing this, and you leave early next week for a tour with Oz Noy and Keith Carlock. Yeah. So how do you manage all of that, first of all?
Well, it's not easy, but at the same time, I'm really into multitasking, and it just comes natural. So, and I love producing, so I've been offered quite a few projects to work on since I left the Yellowjackets in 2012, and that's just been an ongoing process where I have multiple projects going on simultaneously.
Right.
And I've gotten pretty good at it, so I just continue on. I'm glad to have the work, and I'm also glad to be in a position to hire musicians. So I get to do that. That makes my day. I keep a lot of notes.
I bet. I bet.
My memory's still good. And keeping copious notes really help. But I do have a way of organizing all these things. Like I am producing a composer from Germany right now, a guy named Michael Schmidt, a guitarist from Atlanta, Georgia, named Anthony Papamichael. I just did some tracking in Miami. That's where I was before here, with Horacio El Negro Hernandez on drums. And I'm producing a saxophonist in California who was in the Army band, and that's kind of a Zappa-ish project with Chad Wackerman and Scott Kinsey, Mike Miller.
Nice.
Really good bunch of guys there. And I'm doing that in a small studio in the North Hollywood. And I'm producing a singer from Istanbul, Turkey. Her name is Meltem Selabioglu, and I'm using Scott Kinsey to arrange for that. Gary Novak's on drums. I'm also using a very interesting drummer from Hungary, from Budapest, named Gergo Borlai. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but
No,
he's
your name.
great, and you know, probably have a few other musicians involved in that, including a saxophonist named Steve Taglioni who lives in Los Angeles. So let's see, that's 4.
Right.
Okay, and I'm in pre-production right now for a project I'm going to produce in Nashville. Actually, it's another guitarist, and I'm talking to Keith Carlock about playing on that
Great.
with me.
Great.
So that's
5.
Jing Chi.
That's 6. Yeah.
There you go.
Amazing. So I always wonder when someone is as high a level of a musician as you are, how do you not want to just say, I'll play the bass on all this because I can just do it quickly and I know what I want, and you know, how do you sublimate that urge to want to just do it yourself?
Well, I also like to just kind of sit back and listen to the music as it's happening. So it's hard to do that while I'm also playing.
Mm-hmm.
So on most levels, I prefer having another bass player out there performing the music. But I am asked to play on most of the projects I produce. I also like hiring other bass players, so I have no problem with it. I have no ego about that. Mm-hmm. And there's, you know, certain things that are not in my wheelhouse that I would rather hire someone that's proficient at doing a certain genre of music. So
right.
I don't play string bass, so that's a no-brainer. I can hire string bass players to play.
Right.
And I've done quite a few projects where the music was focused around acoustic music. So, you know, acoustic piano, maybe electric guitar, horns, and string bass, so, and drums. And so I know a lot of great string bass players. I love the instrument. I love the way it sounds in an ensemble. And I love the way it caresses the music that's being performed. So I have no problem hiring those guys. So for me, it's easy. It's very easy to hire other bass players.
Right.
I was just working on this German composer's record, and I hired this guy out of Memphis, Tennessee, that I had been watching on YouTube. His name is Mono Neon, and I think he played with Prince briefly. He's a fabulous musician, so I got him on the record.
Nice.
And it's just great to be involved with all these guys.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. So I'm curious, when you're leaving for a tour, as I mentioned, with Osnoy and Keith Carlock, since you're here, one would assume there's not a lot of rehearsal that's going to occur before the tour kicks off.
No rehearsal.
No rehearsal. So how do you have charts? Are you sent tapes? Do you provide things? How do you put the music together so you can hit the ground running?
Well, I've done 3 tours with Oz, so I've already basically memorized his book.
Okay.
He just sent me 2 new pieces of music to learn. That's not a problem. I'll probably be working on that tonight after the session here. Yeah, we leave on Monday, so I fly to Stockholm Monday morning out of Los Angeles. So,
right.
And Keith has done the gig. I think he's even done a bunch of his records. So he knows the material. So, and the very first time I played with Keith was in November of last year, and we had no rehearsal. So we showed up at this gig in Boston and counted it off, and that was it.
Right.
I had done 2 tours previously with Oz, but Dave Weckl was in the drum chair. So
Okay.
I didn't find any problem playing with Keith. He's a wonderful musician.
Right.
Hopefully he didn't find any problems playing with me, and I think we got along gloriously, and I'm looking forward to this tour to get to play with him some more.
Outstanding, outstanding. So Keith Carlock, you mentioned Dave Weckl. I know you've played with Virgil Donati.
Yes.
A variety of outstanding drummers.
Gary Husband, Chad Wackerman, Billy Cobham.
How much does a drummer affect what you do as a bassist?
Well, a lot. I mean, you know, everyone has a different feel. Everyone has different ways of hitting the drums, of you know, how they approach certain grooves. So it's a constant kind of feeling of being on your toes and just making sure you got your ears open and you're listening to what's going on, not taking anything for granted. I've been really lucky in my career thus far that I've worked with so many different drummers, and in so many different genres, really, that at this point in my life, when I sit down with a drummer and it's the first time I'm playing with them, I don't find any problem in locking in with their groove. So that's my perspective. I try to lock into their groove as opposed to them trying to lock into me, because I feel kind of more open to a lot of different ways of expressing the music. And it's easier for me to just go there. And then wherever I can throw in my little 2 cents, I do.
Right, right. I'm curious, you've also been playing for the last 6 years or so, I think, with one of my favorites, Allan Holdsworth.
Yeah.
Tell us about the process of putting that music together, because that's harmonically pretty adventurous stuff.
It's super challenging to play that music. Fortunately, I'm friends with a guy that played with him for many years, Jimmy Johnson. So I got all his cheat sheets, which opened the door to a certain point as far as finding the magic key to play that music, because it's very advanced and complex. And also having his records. I mean, I've listened to his music forever. I'm a fan. So I was familiar with a lot of the music as a listener. And then it was a matter of spending some serious shed time to learn the music and get it under fingertips. So, you know, again, I have my approach, and then playing with various drummers in that ensemble was interesting, because I started out playing with Chad Wackerman in a quartet with Alan Pasqua, and then pretty much after that it was mostly trio gigs with either Virgil Donati or Gary Husband. So all those 3 drummers are different, and you know, it's just learning the music, being comfortable with it. Memorization is important, because that helps. You don't have to be glued to a sheet of paper. And that allows you to really open your mind to the music and, you know, really just be listening to what's going on. Because regardless of, like, knowing the music, it changes from night to night. It's not like, you know, it's not like a blueprint that's going to be the same every night. So you have to just kind of look at the music, understand it, you know, learn all the parameters of it as far as the harmony and the rhythmic portion of the music, and then open the door for any creative things that are going to happen.
Right.
You know.
Right. That has to be fun.
It's a blast.
Yeah. So as a producer, you mentioned some of the projects you're working on. I would assume some of those are younger musicians or musicians who are beginning their career. But you've also worked with people like Jeff Lauber. He did his last 5 albums. As a producer with someone like that, are you very hands-on? Are you saying you should play this, you should do this, or are you more guiding the project, or how do you
There's
approach
some of that.
Yeah.
And I think in Jeff Lauber's case, he was looking for that. I mean, he's he does what he does. He has a sound, he has a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, you know, I mean, that's a good thing to have your own voice and your own sound, but sometimes you want to go outside of that box. And a good way to do that is to collaborate with someone that's going to bring in some other things that influence you in a different way and maybe push you into a different corner of the room.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeff and I had known each other for years, and then we just started playing together. We did some sessions, but when we got into the room to produce a record, then that opened the creative door, and then he was looking at me to throw in some stuff that would, you know, just dissipate what he does and bring in some new elements.
Right.
And that's what I did.
Right. Right. That's awesome.
And he was happy about it. So
Right. Right. That's
it
great.
was a fertile collaboration. So
Mm-hmm.
we got a lot done. I introduced him to some new musicians that he didn't know about. That was another thing that I could bring into the fold.
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself would create something different.
Right.
You know, you bring in a new chemistry.
Right. 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 So my final question for you, I always have to ask this when I have a musician who operates on the level that you do, and has worked with so many great musicians, many of whom we've mentioned here during this interview. What is it that makes a great musician?
Well, I think bottom line, from my opinion, would be to always feel that there's something to learn, that you're not the master of what you do, you're more of a student of music. So you're constantly pushing the envelope to learn new things. I try to learn stuff every day if I can. I'm constantly, and now we have all these incredible tools, you know, with the internet. When I first started playing, there was no internet.
Sure.
And there was records and there was live performance. But now with things like YouTube, you can go on there and watch all kinds of things, you know, get turned on to new things. You know, just to keep a real open approach to playing. And in my case, to producing, my approach is very open, and I'm always looking for a focus and a direction. But I think sometimes before you find that that direction and focus on it, you have to keep a really wide open look at what's going on musically and make an assessment, and then maybe find the seeds that lead you towards a direction. You know, like even with Jing Chi, I wasn't really quite sure how this was all going to come together, you know, as a direction. Because I knew we wanted to do something different. But once we got in here and started working on the music and talking about it, maybe prior to coming here, I felt like I had a pretty good idea of what we were going to be pushing towards, and that's exactly what's happened. So,
right.
So just to keep an open mind, always seeking knowledge. You know, I just try to learn as much about everything as I can with music, and then there's everything else. I have a family. I watch the news, unfortunately, sometimes. So I'm also pretty much in focus with what's going around the world, which is also important because I travel a lot, so I want to make sure wherever I'm going, I'm aware of where I'm getting myself into.
Sure.
I've been to some dangerous places to perform, but fortunately I'm here and still in one piece. But you know, you just have to be aware and maybe not think too much about yourself as far as putting your ego aside and just being in the moment.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I look at all those things first. And then hopefully that's contributing to me being a better musician and even a better producer as time goes on.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that chops didn't come up there, those kinds of things weren't mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I think chops are a good thing, but it's not the most important part of the spectrum. If you have chops, that's great.
Sure.
But personally, I'm looking more for vibe, passion, emotion, and expression. And that could come in the most simplest forms. Don't need a lot of chops for that.
Right.
If you really, I mean, Bob Dylan, when I first heard him perform live, I was deeply moved by what he was saying, what he was doing. It didn't necessarily have a lot of chops to it, but it certainly had a message. And so, chops are great. I mean, it's good for maybe wowing an audience, but it's not always necessary to dig deep and reach people in a very deep manner.
Right. Right. Great stuff.
Is that
Appreciate
okay?
it. That's all
Okay.
wonderful. Thank you, Rashid. There's a lot to take away from that, so I appreciate it very much.
All right.
And thanks for your time today.
My
we know
pleasure.
you're anxious to get back to your sessions, so we want to get you back to making music. So thank you for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.